Hey everyone, it's Rajiv and welcome to my channel Rajiv's Reviews. In this video, I am going to be talking about my September TBR, which I'm very excited about reading, and I will give a synopsis of each of those books that are in my list. I feel like I'm really behind in my reading because I have been traveling for the last few days and I have not been reading as much as I would have liked to. I definitely know that I'm behind on my Goodreads reading challenge for 2018, so I feel like September would be a good month to catch up on that list. So that is why I have decided to read 20 books for the month of September. I know this sounds very ambitious because I also have a full-time job where I don't get to read at all. But I am excited in covering as much as I can from this list, and I feel like I would be covering most of it. So the way I have divided this video is into three sets. The first set will be about the Indian fiction books that I plan on reading. The second set will be all the middle grade books that have been sent to me by publishers that I want to finish reading. And the third set is mainly YAs, mysteries, thrillers, etc., which I want to read as well. So let's get started. The first two books is a novel that I have been dying to read for a while, and that is The Sacred Games by Vikram Chanda, Part 1 and Part 2. Now, this book was initially released by HarperCollins, I think, in 2007, and it was originally just one book, which was some like 900 plus pages long. But recently, this has been adapted as a Netflix TV series, and I think the publishers wanted to get more money on marketing from its success, so they have split the new editions into two parts as part 1 and part 2, each around 450 pages. So as per my understanding, the story revolves around Inspector Satraj Singh, who's having a midlife crisis now that he's in his 40s and his career is going downhill, and so is his personal life. And on the other side, it also talks about the life of the criminal underworld Ganesh Gaitonde, who is the main gangster and villain in the story, I guess. Now, I've heard a lot of wonderful things about Sacred Games because there are a lot of supporting characters and a lot of subplots which take place and a lot of things which are happening which somehow come together in place as the story progresses. I haven't seen the Netflix series yet because I really want to read the books first, and I feel like the books would give me a better impression of the story than the series would. But I plan on seeing the TV show as soon as I finish reading these two books. Now, the next three books in my list are from an author who I have read a lot of praises about for the murder mysteries that he writes, and that is the Inspector Saralkar series by Salil Desai. The first book in the series is The Killing of Ashish Karve, which is followed by The Murder of Sonia Raikkonen, and the third book is 3.5 Murders, which released recently. Now, I'm not really going to go into the details of all of these three books because it's kind of your murder mystery with different plots and different characters with intriguing situations and how the detective tries to solve all the cases. I am guessing that it will be somewhat like my favorite Agatha Christie books, but set in an Indian environment with Inspector Saralkar and his assistant Motkar having to solve these bizarre and gruesome cases. Now, the next two books that I want to finish reading this month are the second and third book from the Shiva Trilogy, which is The Secret of the Nagas and The Oath of the Vayuputras by Amish Tripathi. I really enjoyed reading the first book, The Immortals of Meluha, in the series, and I really want to complete this second and third book as well because I heard that the author is releasing the third book from his following series, the Ramchandra series, in a few months, and I have not even started reading that yet, so I really want to make sure that at least I complete this by September. So the basic plot of the Shiva trilogy revolves around the human deity Shiva, who is depicted as a human person in the series, and it's the ultimate fight of good and evil between him and the Nagas. I haven't read too much of the synopsis in the second and third book because I feel like it spoils a lot of the story. So I'm just excited to dwell into this book and find out what happens. The next book that I have in my TBR is The Mogul by Vish Damija. I picked up this book in Amazon because the plot seemed intriguing and it sounded like something that I would enjoy. Now, it's somewhat of a suspense thriller mystery and revolves around this character named Prem Bedi, who is one of the most successful people in India and is one day accused of killing his ex-wife and her husband. So the story mainly revolves as to whether he did it or not, and the interesting thing is each chapter is told from a first-person perspective of him or his friends and his family. I read the first few pages of this book already and I really like the author's style of writing and I'm interested in reading this one. Now, the next set of books are advanced copies of middle grade novels that I have received from publishers as an ebook format, so I do not have a physical copy to show you, but I will post a picture here. The first book is The Camelot Code, The Once and Future Geek by Mary Mancusi. So we all know the story about King Arthur, about how he pulls the sword from the stone and he becomes the King of England. But in this novel, before all of that happens, a very young Arthur somehow time travels into our present time and he Googles himself to find out what happens to him, and he really does not like reading about the difficult life that he would have, so he decides to stay in the 21st century itself, and it is up to the two young main protagonists to save the day. I think this is such a cool concept and it sounds like an exciting read which I know I will enjoy. The next book is What Goes Up by Wen Jane Barragray. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And the plot seems a little strange, but I feel it will still be fun. And it's about this girl named Robin who thinks that everything falls only on her rooftop, like lost kites and paper aeroplanes and whatnot. And one day she feels that a NASA satellite is also going to fall on her roof. And she kind of goes on this adventure, I think, to save the day to make sure that does not happen. The next book in my list is Nowhere Boy by Catherine Marsh. Now, this book talks about a boy named Ahmed who has fled a life of suffering from Aleppo, Syria, and is now living in Belgium. But even in his new situation, he still feels very isolated and alone. And there in Europe, he meets an American boy named Max, who is also having a difficult time fitting in. So together they form a friendship and they go through this adventure where they discover what it's like to be brave and helpful and hopeful. And I think this is one of those books that will really have an impact because it would probably talk about how children and people are suffering from other countries, which we might not even be able to relate to because we have never been in those circumstances before. So I am very interested in reading this book. The next book in my list is the first book in the Wild Magic Trilogy, which is called Begone the Raggedy Witches by Celine Kiernan. So from the plot, I gather it's about this girl named Mup, whose father has been kidnapped into this supernatural world called the Witch's Burrow. So Mup and her family decide to go to the Witch's Burrow to save her father. And on the way, Mup realizes that even her mother is starting to change and she feels like she is losing her mother as well. So Mup has to go on this weird, spooky adventure where she has to balance to see if she can save her mother and her father. This sounds like a very spooky Grimm's fairy tale, which I love reading, so I'm looking forward to reading this book as well. And the last book in my middle grade list is The Truth About Martians by Melissa Savage. Now, the story revolves around two friends who are Milo and Dibs, and they are obsessed about Martians and comics. Now, one night they see a flash of light outside the window and they think that it's a flying saucer that has landed. And then the story kind of follows the adventure between Milo and Dibs. And the whole setting takes place in near Roswell during the time of 1947, when the real alien crash landings happen, which I still don't know is authentic or not. So those are all the middle grade novels that I am looking forward to reading this month. And the last set of books that I am going to talk about are the list of YA and mysteries and thrillers that I'm planning on reading in September. The first book is The Sea Witch by Sarah Henning, which I have purchased an ebook copy of. Now, again, I am not really clear on the plot of the book, but I know that this is a reimagining or retelling of Ursula's character from The Little Mermaid. But Ursula is one of my favorite Disney villains because she is so sassy and has so much attitude, and I know I will love reading this book. The next book in my list is Scream All Night by Derek Millman. The story revolves around Dario, who lives in this gothic castle, which is also a movie studio where his father had produced a lot of B-rated horror movies many years ago. Now, it has been many years since Dario had actually left the castle, but one day he gets this mysterious invitation from his brother to come back to the castle to attend a weird ceremony. So I guess the plot continues as to what Dario discovers once he goes back. And that's all I know about the plot. But I have heard so many positive reviews about this book, and I'm so excited at reading it because I love YA thriller / horror type of books, and I think this will be right up my alley. My next book is I Am Still Alive by Kate Alice Marshall. This book is a YA thriller suspense survival story, and it talks about this disabled girl named Jess who has moved in with her father in the wilderness after her mother has passed away. So what she doesn't know is that her father also has secrets of his own, and he also gets killed. So now it is up to Jess and her dog to find out what happened and get revenge on her father. Again, so many positive reviews about this book, and I'm very excited about reading it, and will probably be on the top of my TBR list. My next book is All These Beautiful Strangers by Elizabeth Klepforth. Am I pronouncing that right? I hope I didn't butcher the name. This story focuses on Charlie, whose mother mysteriously disappears when she is a child. Now, Charlie is grown up and she is attending this prestigious New England school, and she has also been selected for this top secret society where she has to play this game, where she gets involved in a lot of risky and diabolical situations that could also reveal the truth about her family and what really happened to her mother. Now, the next book in my list is something that is interesting, but I also feel very nervous reading. But I have to read it because I got an advance copy of this book from the publisher, and that is The Good Demon by Jimmy Cajolis. It's a very twisted story about this girl named Claire who has just been exorcised to get this demon out of her. But after this incident, she actually misses the demon and she wants her to come back to her because she felt very close to the demon. And I guess the story just continues from there to see what actually happens to her. Now, I'm not really comfortable in reading about exorcisms because it's one of those topics that really spooked me, and I'm still a little uncomfortable about how this author might have talked about exorcisms in a lighthearted manner. But since I got an arc of this book, I would want to still read it, and I'm definitely going to try and finish it this month. Another similar book that I received an advance copy of from the publisher was Hunting Annabelle by Wendy Hurd. The story revolves around this man named Sean who has just been released from prison after a 3-year sentence. So he immediately has his eyes on this girl named Annabelle, but he tries his best to stay away from her. But one day Annabelle disappears and the first prime suspect is Sean. So the story then progresses to see whether Sean did it or not. And yeah, I think that this book is a little less scary than the Exorcism book, so I might read this one before the other one. The next book that I am very excited about reading is the first book in the Descendants series, and that is The Isle of the Lost by Melissa de la Cruz. Now, again, I haven't read the plot in detail about this one because I just want to dive into the book and find out what happens. But at a high level, it's about all the Disney villains who are stranded on this island, and four of their children team up together to save the world or something like that. But the whole concept sounds so cool, and I'm a huge Disney fan, so I cannot wait to find out how the story goes. And the last book on my list is When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon. It is a young adult contemporary romance novel which of course talks about the two main protagonists, Dimple and Rishi, who are two American Indian students who have very different views about the Indian heritage and the traditions, and it's supposed to be a fun, quirky story about how they get together. This book has been overhyped so much, and I think initially when it had released, a lot of people were talking about it, and it's one of those books that people either loved or they hated. So I'm going to read it and find out exactly how I feel about it. Anyway, this concludes the list of books for my September TBR. If you have read any of these books, do let me know your thoughts and opinions on the comment section below. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and click on the bell icon if you would like to receive notifications on any book related videos that I post regularly. Thanks for watching. Bye.